Hello, everyone. We have today with us Joe McNeill. Joe is a CRO at Influ2 and a B2B technology sales leader with a track record of scaling revenue and building high performing commercial teams. He has extensive experience leading sales teams of 50 to 100 people. He has helped multiple tech companies achieve hyper growth, successful exits, IPOs, you name it, he has done it. Obviously his expertise spans across go-to-market, revenue ops, demand gen, pipeline acceleration, basically a powerhouse in scaling B2B SaaS companies. Welcome, Joe. Excited to speak with you.
Yeah, excited to be here.
Great. So let's deep dive and jump right in. You've had an incredible journey, right? Like scaling revenue teams and revenues, successful exits, like we spoke about. So, how did you what has been your journey? What have been the key milestones and what have been the key learnings?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really set out for this career path to start, to be frank. I'm actually a landscape architecture major. Midway through school, I realized I wasn't very good at drawing and kind of pivoted, but I fell into sales. And honestly, if I think of my path and my journey, it's been a lot of luck, a lot of good timing, and then a lot of good fortune in terms of having good mentors, good leaders, and good teams along the way.
Yeah, well, they say, you know, people who are modest will give the credit to luck, but it's all the hard work and being at the right place at the right time. Uh, Joe, so tell us a little bit more about your role at Influ2, how you helping scale Influ2 today, um, and give us like some of your playbooks and growth frameworks. Like share those with us. Companies who are like in the 1 to 10 journey, 10 to 50, or 10 to 100, 10, 50 to 100. Like, what are some of the growth frameworks which have worked for you?
Yeah, I think, there's a lot of different ways you can look at it. For me, when I started, we didn't necessarily have an acquisition problem. We have a cool novel product, and a lot of people wanted to try it. But that in itself can cause some challenges in the sense that, like, being a smaller company with limited resources, uh, too much new business that isn't sort of in it for the long haul, or looking to drive impact, more just wants to check it out, can be a challenge and create too much noise. So a lot of what I've done since I've started here has been really focused on the post-sale side of everything, and how do we acquire business that we can plug into their strategy and be long-term partners and drive NRR. Outside of that, we our platform, our tool helps drive pipeline, and one of our sort of secret superpowers here internally is Influ2 is Influ2's biggest customer. We drive all of our pipeline and demand gen through our own platform, and we have a very sophisticated program in terms of how we do it. And really, it's been optimizing how do we target the right people at the right accounts to really drive long-term growth and long-term business within the organization. So for me, it's been a lot of organizations optimize their ICP and their buying groups around the accounts that convert at the highest level and convert for the most money. And for us, it was really how do we optimize our ICP and our buying groups around accounts that have the highest likelihood to renew and stick with us long term. So we looked a lot in terms of optimizing our ICP around LTV and not just average deal size and conversions.
Very interesting. Can you deep dive into that a little bit more? Like, how are the two not related? Typically, people would like, deal sizes and renewals kind of would go hand in hand. It's tough to get in, tougher to get out. Those kind of mindsets. Can you give an example of how those are different for you on the ICP front?
Yeah, I mean, we're typically a new program within an account. We do something that we do contact focused advertising, and we don't just fit into your standardized old advertising playbook. It's really driving a new orchestration strategy. And what I was seeing is as we would go through the sales process, people would get really excited about that, and we could sell some really big deals. But given we were a new discipline within the org, and a lot of companies are bandwidth strapped right now, if we oversold them, they'd struggle to sort of wrap their arms around the entirety of the program, and it wouldn't be as successful. So what we look to do is, instead of selling as much as we can, it's let's package them into something that's digestible and executable, so that they can be successful. Because, given that we bolt into the commercial process and the pipeline gen and the sales process, and we can show direct, A plus B equals C revenue influence. If they're successful, they'll grow with us, right? So rather than, try to get all those dollars right away, let's start with something digestible, and really, if they can be successful out of the gate, it becomes easier to expand the program long term than if we try to sort of get them to eat the elephant right away.
Very interesting. So you're not necessarily saying the kind of accounts you're going after are different. You're just saying land and expand versus upfront deal sizes.
Yeah, it's a little bit the accounts as well, in the sense that, we target accounts big and small, but it's more like what is the strategy that they're looking to drive, because we, being in the contact advertising space, there's some that are like, hey, this is a cool tool, I want to slap people's name on some ads and throw it out there, and it's like, well, what are you looking to achieve with that? And they're like, I don't know, more leads or something. And it's we just don't want to sort of dip our toe in those, like, hey, this is cool, I want to try it out use cases. It's more like, hey, let's build a program sort of orchestrated around your commercial process, where we can be a catalyst to your pipeline motion.
Got it. And Joe, like with your team, right? Like, how do you train them, and how do you measure them in terms of their ability to do good discovery calls? Because it seems like, what you're saying is that it also comes down to a lot of discovery once the meetings have been set up, right? Like,
Yeah.
how do you train them for that?
Well, we if you're familiar with Chris Orlob, we are a P Club customer, his e-learning platform. We're constantly reviewing those courses. We have, I have a relatively small team on the commercial side. The team's a lot bigger on the post-sale side. And we all work together and collaborate on challenges we're fixing and facing. And we look through, like, hey, what are our key wins? What are our key losses? And we reverse engineer those. But on top of that, we have a solution architect that used to be a customer success manager, and he does program mapping pre-sale. So as we go through, as we do discovery, as we do demo, we also map out what their program would look like before they ever buy the platform, so that once they buy, implementation is somewhat of a breeze, in the sense that we already have everything mapped out. We know how we're going to bolt into their commercial process.
Super interesting. Like, so you're saying a person from the customer success side actually doing pre-sales and mapping out the whole program. You're seeing good success with that. And
Yeah, it kind of depends on what you define as success, right? Like, we probably lose some deals that we could have closed in the process, by sort of having this extra step. But again, like my vision of success isn't close as many deals as possible. It's have customers be as successful as possible.
yeah,
So from a success standpoint, yeah, we see a lot more success in having customers more aligned with the orchestration vision and more ready for implementation once paper is signed.
makes a ton of sense. And what about P Club? Like, how would you rate that?
How do we leverage P Club? P Club is great. It's an e-learning platform that Chris Orlob has developed and he owns. He has a lot of the training sessions are delivered by him. He's a very bright guy that I believe in a lot of his methodology, but I also like the way that he lays things out. There's a lot of other sort of videos from guests on there as well, but it's great in the sense that, like, we'll pick a topic, we'll all go through the topic, we'll discuss it weekly, and then we'll, sometimes there's sort of exercises or homework, if you will, throughout the trainings that we'll go through. And it's just a good way to get people to think critically about how we're framing our business and how we're going about our business.
Right. And once you've implemented this, right, like, how do you track it then? Like, how do you track people's performance? Are they using it actively? What has been the improvement? Like, are you using Gong kind of software as, like, how you measuring in the efficacy of the discovery calls or demo calls?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. The AE team reports directly to me still, given that we're relatively small on that side. Honestly, our AEs have been with us long enough, and they're strong enough that, I bomb in and listen to some Gong calls here or there. but most of our learning is really collaborative in the sense of they come to their one-on-ones, they have things that they want to discuss, they have questions that they have about deals or about things that came up. So it's more of a maintenance than anything. All of our AEs hit quota last year. All of them are forecast to be above quota this quarter, so they're doing well so it's not really like hey, let's see exactly how different this drove it. I don't measure it that specifically, if that makes sense.
Sure. And can you, Joe, talk about the journey from 8 to 100 million at Siteimprove, also like Proto Labs, like what has been the difference between Influ2 versus some of those others, and what are your collective learnings and some frameworks you can share with us?
Yeah, ProtoLabs was almost entirely an inbound driven business. It was very marketing led. And that was about acquiring business and growing business. And we had great leadership there. I was fortunate to have great mentors there that sort of helped me grow up, if you will. Siteimprove was a little bit different in the sense that we were almost 100% outbound, right? We were more sales led than marketing led. And we had, the SDR team was the primary driver of pipeline. At Siteimprove, I think, one of the challenges was we were very verticalized. So it was almost like managing 10 businesses within the business. The vertical that sold to healthcare operated very differently than the vertical that sold to federal government, operated very differently than the vertical that sold to higher education. So for us, it was really like, how do we develop these segments? How do we continue to mature these segments? But then how do we go find new segments to attack along the way? And scaling the sales development program is challenging, right? When you're an $8 million company and you want to grow 50%, that's not easy. But when you're a $60 million company and you want to grow 50%, that's a lot of meetings that the SDRs need to schedule. And it's within territories that we've been calling on for a number of years. So we spent a lot of time sort of optimizing the sales development motion, training the sales development reps, and really using that as a building ground for new AEs as well. So our sales dev team was big, and it was really the team that fed the entire commercial team. We did a lot of internal promotions, a lot of internal growth, and that really helped to get people to ramp quicker on the AE side.
So two things, right? One is what worked for you? Like what clicked in terms of that 60 mil to like 50% growth on that, right? Like you said, a large team. Like how did you get more out of them? Like if someone was at that stage, what's your advice to them? And second is, would you do it differently in this new Gen AI era, right? Like, or would you be like, no, it's still the same playbook works?
Yeah, I think so. So starting at my advice for folks that are looking to grow, I don't really believe in growth hacking or like this idea that like, hey, we're going to find this new strategy, or we're going to find this new product, or we're going to find this new thing that like fundamentally changes our program and sort of takes us to the next level. I think you really have to have a growth mindset in the sense of like, hey, our job is to scratch and claw for every inch of optimization, every inch of efficiency that we can get. And you have to be willing to screw up. Like we took sort of a scientific approach in the sense that like we tried a lot of new things, and a lot of them didn't work, right? But as you try those new things, you got to be, essentially our job was, hey, we're going to try this, and this is why we think it's going to work. And then the next step is like, hey, this is why we thought this was going to work. This is why it didn't work, and this is what we're going to do about it to optimize it. So I think sometimes leaders are scared to make a mistake, or scared to be wrong, or scared to admit that they're wrong. And I think like if you're not breaking things or screwing up or being wrong, then you're just not doing enough stuff. And I think really we had a flat organization. We had a phenomenal team, and we trusted those teams to make decisions. I stole this from the CEO at ProtoLabs, but he characterized our culture as a collaborative meritocracy, and I've always took that with me in the sense of like, we don't care where the idea comes from. If everybody knows that our job is to get, look for inches of improvement, inches of efficiency gains, like there's no sacred cows. If you think we could be doing something better or optimize something we're doing, let's talk about it, right? If something will stand up to scrutiny, then maybe we shouldn't be doing it. So for me, I think really how we did it was through sheer force of will and never, pardon me, never becoming complacent in the sense of like we always needed to optimize to get better. And what worked yesterday may not be what works tomorrow.
Right. And would you do something differently now in this era of Gen AI?
Yeah, I think to me, like we spent a lot of time, pardon me, understanding how to differentiate, right? And like our SDRs, there's a lot of noise. And everybody's seen the MarTech landscape chart where like, in 2014, there was 200 MarTech companies. Now there's 2 million. So it's just more competitive now. So I think different, yes and no. Like the execution would be different, but the strategy would be similar. Back then our SDRs spent a lot of time really personalizing emails to stand out so that you could tell that they were written by a person targeting another person. They were well thought out and how they can offer value to that person. So for me, I think too many companies try, their pipeline strategy becomes a mile wide and an inch deep. We're like, hey, we're behind on our pipeline targets, so let's target more and more folks. And me, I think you got to be more specific and intentional.
Right. So you're saying, like, just to make sure I get that, you're saying personalization is important. It was done manually. AI can probably replace some of that, like can make people more productive on personalization.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is back then, personalization was how you differentiated and improved you were a person. For better or worse, now AI can kind of automate personalization. So it takes more than that. Like I think now it's humanization. Like how do you prove to the person you're reaching out to that you're a person and that you can offer them value? Because there is, I used to respond to all SDR outreach that came to me. I love SDRs. Obviously, I've built a career off of that you leveraging SDRs as a strategy for growth. So it'd be kind of hypocritical for me to ignore them at this point. But I would say now 95% of the outreach I get in my inbox is not from an SDR. It's automated, whether it's AI or it's just, outreach automation. And that's partially because we're a smaller company. So our company's in the bucket to get automated outreach, but for the most part, like most of what your prospects are getting are just falling into the sort of the sea of automation. Like if you can differentiate and really focus on like, hey, I'm a person, I can offer you value, and this is why I'm reaching out. Whether it's we know some of the same people or we work with some of the same companies or whatever, and you can offer them value to their business, then I think that's how you differentiate right now. Because a lot of outreach right now is not great. So differentiation is really, instead of personalization, it's humanization to me.
Very interesting. I like the term humanization, right? Like, and are you like, from what you just gave as an example, are you saying relationship networks become more important? Who you're connected to, like you said, we worked at this place together, or we went to school together. Like some of those things, do you think those will start getting more and more utilized? Like, how do you?
Yeah, it has to be. It can't be superficial in the sense of like, hey Karan, we went to the same school, or I see you went to this school and this, but it's like, hey Karan, I was recently working with one of your connections on this challenge, and he was able to execute this with it. I was just chatting with him, and he mentioned that like you might be a good fit for this, and it can't be BS, right? Like it has to be an actual connection.
Yeah.
Or even it's like, hey, I was working with this company and we uncovered this insight within this, like, I think this might be relevant for your company. Would it be all right if I shared some of these insights with you? Whether it's teaching them something about their business, about the market, or connecting through this, I think it's important to really think through that rather than just finding like, hey, this person went to this college, this person went to this college. Let's just mention that, and they'll, that in itself doesn't offer a lot of value. It's why that matters that offers value.
So sure, you're saying go deeper, like customer referrals might be more powerful. Saying you are connected to this person who's a customer, or we jointly solved something, and
Yeah.
therefore we should talk. No, that makes so much sense. Moving on, right? Like Joe, in one of your posts, you mentioned how the B2B buying journey is more complicated than ever. A lot more stakeholders involved in a deal. from your experience, right? Like, what are some of the most effective strategies for sellers to navigate this complexity and build strong internal champions within their target accounts? Like this buying committee concept. How do
Yeah,
you do that?
I think you have to focus on like how do we support their buying journey and how do we make this as easy as possible and how do we like help them through it, because it's not easy. Since COVID, the amount of people making a buying decision has gone up and up and up. And just like anything else, the more people that are involved, the more difficult it gets because everybody has a little bit different of an opinion on what they're looking to get out of whatever, engagement that they're building. So you really like partially internally, you need to map out what does our standard buying committee look like? Who are the personas in there? And typically, how do we offer value for those personas? Right. And you need to really break out how do we message those people in a way that's impactful for them. But then during the deal cycle, you need to realize that like we need to multi-thread these deals. Like multi-threading is the biggest driver of conversion rates now, right? So it's like, who do we have involved in the deal? Who's actively involved? Who am I talking to? And how do I support them through the process rather than try to drive them to where I want them to go, if that makes sense.
Yeah, two things on that, right? Can you talk a little bit more about multi-threading, how you see this, right? And do you think deal rooms are bringing any value to working with multiple stakeholders in an organization?
I think they can. I've never used a deal room, I
Okay.
should say. I've heard it depends on how they're built, right? If they're built to make the process easier and to support the buying journey, then sure, yeah, they could be great. If they're built like, hey, we want to, shove our content down these people's throats, and we want to, be able to get to them in a different way, then maybe not. So just like anything else, I think if they're executed properly, good. And like the bigger picture with the deal room is I think overall too many commercial organizations, it's like, hey, our job is to get this opportunity to the AE. Once the AE has the opportunity, he or she are on their own, right? Where like marketing should be supporting open opportunities. Marketing should be supporting, generating engagement with the entire buying group, helping unearth people that are a part of the buyer group, making the buying process easier. So really, it's like there just needs to be more effort in the open opportunities on the marketing side. I feel like it's kind of funny how like marketing for most companies, marketing puts a ton of effort into sort of pipeline generation, then falls off once opportunities are open. And then like the internal assets the AE has access to, like whether it's their executive team or solution architecture or whatever, they have a lot of support during the open opportunity process for those assets, where I'd like to see marketing more involved in open opportunities, and I'd like to see the executive team and some of these solution architects and whatnot more involved pre-pipeline and sort of helping generate pipeline. So I think like we can look at how we're dispersing our resources throughout the buying process and throughout the revenue lifecycle, and see like how do we make this more even throughout the entirety of the revenue lifecycle, instead of like this team supports here, this team supports here, and this team supports here, and there's like very the like gates in terms of who helps when.
Got it. So just again, more collaboration at different stages of the funnel.
Yes,
Um,
correct.
Got it. And guys, you should check out the post. We found it to be pretty helpful. Uh, just a couple of more things, Joe. One is you were talking about like the LTV concept and maximizing revenue from so how do you like also focus on maximizing revenue from existing accounts? So basically upsells, cross sells, renewals. Uh, like as the CRO, like how do you split time between net new revenue from new customers versus existing customers? Because you can't build a great B2B SaaS business, at least that's what a lot of people say, without having your existing customers adding like 50% of net new revenues.
Yeah, I mean, I think the NRR is a very important unit economic for venture capital, for private equity, for valuations. So I think it does drive some interesting behavior from companies at times to try to drive revenue from their base. So I think you can't look at your customer base as like a cash cow that how do we squeeze more revenue out of them. To me, like, it's very simple. Success, right? How do we make our customers more successful with our program, right? And for us, it's somewhat easy in the sense of like success is pipeline and revenue. So how do we help them drive more pipeline and drive more revenue with our program? Because if they do that, they will expand with us, right? If you can show $1 investment yields X dollars in pipeline or revenue, it's very easy to support a business case for expansion. So I think successful customers are growing customers are successful customers, and I think too many post sales teams just view churn mitigation as like their number one job. To me, like, success and growth is the best tool to mitigate churn. But then again, we do have customers that, like, they're not huge. They're sort of at the cap of what their program can be right now. And if we support them growing as an organization, then we'll grow with them. But that growth is a bit more moderate than some bigger companies where we're, doing smaller programs and there's a ton of room for growth. So for me, it's like we're very, very focused on how do we make our customers more successful, because to me, do that and you'll get more and more expansion revenue. But on top of that, I mentioned before, it's like, how do we generate new logos that are going to be able to expand with us? And I think, your new logo process is really the fuel that drives the expansion process after that.
And Joe, on that, right? And I have a question from Nicholas. I'll just get to that immediately after this. The question there is, like, when you're talking about outcomes, does that mean that you are a believer in like bigger customer success teams who are actively engaging with the customers? Or you're saying, no, you can drive outcomes just by product innovation? Like, what's your take on that? Because sometimes people are like, PLG, no CS, right? Like fully automated. Versus some people are like, no, outcomes, we are happy to do some consultative approach towards that. Uh, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's too much sort of argument about structure and less focus on sort of process and execution. You see a lot of chatter about, like, should there be account managers and customer success, or should there just be customer success and then the AEs focus on expansion? And really, like, there's very successful companies that do it all sorts of ways, because the structure itself isn't what necessarily dictates success or not. It's more like how are we supporting the customer, how are we executing, and what's our process look like? And if you view this as like, if you have an account management team, if their sole job is like, how do we squeeze more revenue out of this, it's not going to work well. It's going to be a weird experience for the customer. But if you have a post sales team that, like, their entire job is supporting the customer to get them off the ground, help them be more successful, drive the outcomes they want, then you're going to get growth. So for me, it's less about structure. I think, PLG can, every product's different, every go-to-market's a little different. And that's why our jobs are hard. If there was just sort of a blueprint you could follow, then, I wouldn't have to exist. Commercial operators wouldn't have to exist, because you could just sort of execute within the blueprint. You have to look at your organization and look at your go-to-market and sort of tinker with it to get it to work the best. But, like, there's a reason there's very successful companies that do it all sorts of different ways, because it's less about the way. I think, the way that works for your company, what's right is what works. It's more about, like, how do we drive success with these customers within the way that we're doing it. So, like, if we're building a PLG, like, how does that going to support our customers to be more successful?
Got it. And we'll end with the final question from Nicholas. He's asking, saying, do you have visibility across close lost opportunities? And do you like link that to what happened on the calls on the pre-sales journey?
Yeah, we do. I try, call me old fashioned, but I try to focus on successful business a lot more than sort of churned or lost business. Like, we learn from churn, and we learn from our lost business, but we focus more on, like, how do we get more of these that are very successful? Looking at the close loss, I think, we always review it. Usually it's a mutual decision. We're not sort of saying, like, hey, you can't do business with us. It's more like, hey, we've had a lot of customers that have come to us wanting to drive a program right like that, and here's the challenges they face. Like, we want to make sure you're getting the most out of your investment. Like, and we collaborate back and forth with them, and either they tinker with their program a little bit, or they say, you're right, this might not be the right fit, and it's sort of a mutual discussion back and forth about it. So I think, yeah, we learn from our closed loss business. I think, we've seen, we have some types of programs that we've seen, like, these typically don't work, and they're not, a great use of the prospect's investment. We're going to be transparent with them pre-sale about that, because we'd rather tell them pre-sale than have them find out after they've paid us.
Great. Awesome. Joe, we are on time. Lovely chatting with you, and keep doing what you're doing. Obviously, Influ2 is very unique in what it offers, and best of luck, and look forward to being in touch.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Take care. Bye.